Injury, tragedy, and misfortune make these athletes the unluckiest players in NBA history. Brandon Knight. A player being known for his highlights is a good thing. Unless you're Mr. Knight, Brandon seems to always be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Just watch CP3 throw DeAndre Jordan an alley-oop, where Jordan slams an absolutely vicious dunk in Knight's face. It was so nasty that Jordan had to make a stank face and became an all-time meme. If that wasn't bad enough, that same season, during the 2013 Rising Stars game, Kyrie Irving stole Knight's ankles. You can say this happens to almost every basketball player at some point in their career, but with the NBA's brightest stars all gathered around the courtside, Irving crossed him up not once, but twice on back-to-back possessions. Knight had already had enough that year. Too bad for him. Kobe wanted in on the action. On a fast break, Kobe yammed all over Knight and let him know about it. Brandon's 2013 might have been worse than 2020. Maurice Stokes. Stokes' story is more than unlucky, it's tragic. In 1956 and 57, Stokes ranked top 10 in the league in points, rebounds, and assists per game. Stokes was viewed as one of the game's best forwards at the time. During his abbreviated 3-year career, Stokes made the All-Star and All-NBA second teams in each season. Then, in the final game of the 1957-58 NBA season, one routine drive to the hoop would forever change his life. After drawing contact, Stokes struck his head as he fell to the court and was knocked unconscious, while he was revived with smelling salts and even returned to the game. Just 3 days later, while aboard a plane heading to a playoff game, he suffered a series of seizures. Stokes fell into a coma that left him permanently paralyzed, and the only way he could communicate after that was by blinking his eyes. Stokes ended up supported and cared for by his lifelong friend and teammate, Jack Twyman, who became his legal guardian. He eventually gained some limited physical movement and limited speaking ability, but his condition deteriorated, and he died at age 36. Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose's roller coaster of a career will go down in history. Rose exploded onto the NBA scene, winning Rookie of the Year, averaging 16.8 points and 6.3 assists per game, and making the All-Star team in just his second season. He continued to one-up himself the following year. At just 22 years and 6 months, he became the youngest player of all time to win league MVP. He led the Bulls to their first 60-win season and conference finals since MJ, while becoming just the third player in NBA history to record 2,000 points and 600 assists in a single season. D. Rose wasn't just the face of the Bulls, he had become a face of the league. So, December of 2011, the Bulls signed him to a 5-year, $94.8 million extension, which was 30% of their salary cap, the maximum allowed under a rule dubbed the Derrick Rose rule from that year's CBA. But then, everything came crashing down during the playoffs that season, when in Game 1, he tore his ACL. He missed the rest of the playoffs and the entire 2012-13 season. Rose's return the following year was also short-lived, as on November 22nd, he tore the meniscus in his knee, ending his season again. In 2014-15, he led the Bulls to the playoffs. One game, he even went off for 30 and hit a game winner. Everyone thought that D. Rose was back, except he wasn't. Rose spent one more year in Chicago before playing for 4 different teams over the next 5 seasons, and he never regained his explosive athleticism. Drazen Petrovic. Petrovic should have never made this list, but fate had its own plans. Born and raised in Croatia, Drazen spent the first decade of his professional basketball career terrorizing Europe. Then in 1989, in pursuit of a bigger stage, he made the decision to move to the US to join the NBA. At first, he struggled with the Trailblazers, so Portland quickly sent him to Brooklyn. And in his first full season with the Nets, he averaged 20.6 points per game, while shooting 44.4% from beyond the arc. Petrovic further established himself the following season. In 1992 and 93, averaging 22.3 points per game with nearly an identical 3-point field goal percentage. Coming into the summer of 93, Petrovic established himself as one of the best shooting guards in the game. In America, it looked like luck was on his side, but when Petrovic decided to compete with the Croatian national team in Berlin for a qualification tournament, his luck changed. The team was taking a plane to their next game, but Petrovic decided he would spend some quality time with his girlfriend and drive. On the road, while Petrovic was fast asleep in the passenger seat, his girlfriend was driving them on the Autobahn in the middle of a thunderstorm. We at Nonstop Sports tend to drive slower in the rain, but apparently, she was flying at 100 miles per hour when all of a sudden a truck started swerving on the wet road and caused her to lose control of the car. They slammed into the guardrail and then into the truck. Petrovic was not wearing a seatbelt that night and died on impact. The news shocked the basketball community all over the world, and in memory of Petrovic that year, the Nets retired his number 3 jersey. DeMarcus Cousins. While there's never an ideal time for an injury, over the years, Boogie Cousins' injuries have cost him more than just playing time. In 2018, Cousins put up career numbers for the Pelicans, averaging 25.2 points, 12.9 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 1.6 steals, and 1.6 blocks per game. He was well on his way to making the Pelicans break the bank to keep him in NOLA, until an injury would change all of that. While chasing his own missed free throw with only 15 seconds left in the game, Boogie suffered a torn Achilles tendon. In an instant, he went from future franchise cornerstone to a high-risk gamble. Because he was balling out so much, ESPN reporter Zach Lowe said that the Pelicans would offer Cousins a 5-year max contract despite the injury. But that never happened. Boogie then felt the Pelicans lowballed him with an offer, so he decided to bet on himself and chase a ring with the Warriors by signing a 1-year, $5.3 million deal. And at first, things were looking up for Boogie. He battled back from the injury and was averaging 16.3 points and 8.2 rebounds per game. The problem is, Cousins is one of the unluckiest players in NBA history. So in Game 2 of the Warriors' first-round playoff matchup, while trying to secure a routine loose ball, he tore his left quadriceps, and then signed another 1-year deal worth just $3.5 million with the Lakers. But before Boogie ever suited up in the purple and gold, he tore his ACL while working out. A third season-ending injury not only tanked his value, but it denied him a chance to be a part of the Lakers' 2020 championship run. Isaiah Thomas. Attempting to overcome devastating pain on and off the court, Thomas has given this game everything, but it has not always been kind in return. After playing for the Kings and Suns, IT was given a bad rap. He was painted as an unlikable teammate and not a winner, but that all changed when he was traded to the Celtics. In Boston, Thomas resurrected his career and showed flashes of greatness. After an all-star season in 2015-16, Thomas kicked it up a notch again. He finished third in the league in scoring, putting up 28.9 points a night, and IT became the 6th Celtic to ever score 2,000 points in a single season. IT was looking unstoppable until his bad luck would kick in. He came into the playoffs with a chip on his shoulder because right before the postseason started, his sister passed away. He managed to take Boston all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, but in Game 2, IT suffered a hip injury that led to the Celtics being knocked out of the postseason. And if that wasn't cruel enough, that offseason, after IT gave the Celtics everything and then some, they traded him to Cleveland. Following the trade, it came out that Thomas had been playing through a number of hip issues for several seasons. It was an issue that never left him alone and kept him from ever returning to that superstar form. Before his first season with the Cavs was up, they quickly traded him to the Lakers, and just a month later, he underwent a season-ending hip surgery. He's bounced around the league ever since, playing for 7 different teams, and never played more than 40 games for any of them. The injury robbed him of his dynamic playmaking ability, and what would have been a big-time contract. Greg Oden. A team using the first pick to take a player over Kevin Durant speaks volumes about that player's ceiling. And that's what the Trailblazers did in 07 with Oden. Oden was so talented that he was a one-and-done at Ohio State. Steve Kerr described him as a once-in-a-decade player. People believed he was to be the league's next great big man, but he can never stay healthy. He missed his entire rookie season after undergoing surgery on his knee. The next year, when it finally came time for his NBA debut, just 13 minutes into the game, he suffered a foot injury. Later that same season, he was forced to miss 3 weeks due to a chipped kneecap. At the start of the 2009 season, it looked like Oden had finally found his groove in the league, recording 24 points in one game and 20 rebounds in another. But 4 days later, he suffered a season-ending knee injury that had him taken off in a stretcher. Oden wouldn't play another game until 2013 with the Miami Heat, which would be his final season in the league. In total, he played just 105 games over his injury-plagued career. Len Bias. Hailed as the league's next star, Bias' story was forever changed before even suiting up for NBA action. While playing for Maryland, Bias became a star in college, being named an All-American and ACC Player of the Year in both his junior and senior seasons. He dominated defenders with his otherworldly athleticism and brute strength. NBA teams were drooling at the opportunity of drafting him. In the '86 draft, the Celtics thought they hit the lottery by selecting him with the 2nd overall pick. One of their scouts even compared him to Michael Jordan, which, as crazy as it may seem, was not that hot of a take at the time. But Bias' dream of playing in the NBA turned into a nightmare overnight. Boston drafted him on June 17th, and Bias returned to Maryland's campus to celebrate the following evening. That night, while talking with one of his college teammates, he had a seizure and collapsed. Bias was eventually rushed to the hospital, where desperate attempts to restart his heart and breathing were unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead at 8:55 a.m., just 36 hours after being drafted. To this day, his story is still referred to as one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. Tracy McGrady. T-Mac was always at the right place at the wrong time. He spent the first 3 years of his career in Toronto, where his running mate was his distant cousin Vince Carter, who became like a brother to him. The duo could never get over the hump in the postseason, so McGrady made the extremely emotional decision to leave and head to Orlando to team up with Grant Hill and Tim Duncan. Except that plan fell apart before it began, as Duncan reversed course last second to stay with the Spurs. T-Mac and Hill would still make a formidable pairing, but Hill could never stay healthy, playing a total of just 47 games with Orlando. McGrady then left the Magic for the Rockets to play with another star in Yao Ming. That's where T-Mac's story repeated itself, as Yao was just as injury-riddled as Hill, and in a stacked West, the Rockets never made it out of the first round of the playoffs. McGrady spent the next few seasons bouncing around struggling teams, before being signed in 2013 by the Spurs for playoff depth. The Spurs made it all the way to the finals, giving T-Mac his first ever finals appearance, and were just one play away from a ring. But then, Ray Allen hit the infamous corner three in Game 6 as the Heat went on to win the series in 7. After that, McGrady never played in the NBA again.